Once upon a time, there was a teacher of the law. This man thought he knew all about God's laws and how to follow them perfectly. But one day he wanted to make sure he understood everything correctly. So he asked Jesus a question. Who is my neighbor? Who do I have to be nice to? Now, he asked this question to trick Jesus because he wanted to see if Jesus would say only the Jewish people were neighbors, not others. But Jesus already knew what the teacher was thinking. So instead of answering right away, Jesus told him a story. Once upon a time, a man was traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. It was a long and dangerous trip because there were robbers hiding nearby waiting to attack people. As a man was walking on the road, some thieves jumped out from behind some bushes. They attacked him and took everything he had. They beat him up badly and left him almost dead on the road. By some miracle, he was still alive, but nobody helped him. Nobody cared about him. Some time later, a priest came walking along that same road. When he saw the injured man, he pretended not to notice him. He quickly crossed over to the other side of the road and walked past without saying a word. A little while later, another religious leader called a Levite came across the man. He also pretended the man wasn't there and crossed over to the other side. Then a Samaritan came along. He was someone from a different religion and most Jewish people didn't like him. But when he saw how badly the injured man was hurt, he felt very sorry for him. So he went closer to help. He poured oil and wine on the man's wounds. Oil and wine were special liquids used a long time ago to clean and help heal cuts and bruises. Then he carefully helped the man get on his donkey. The Samaritan led the donkey to an inn, which was a place for travelers to rest their animals and themselves. The Samaritan paid the keeper of the inn to take good care of the man. He promised to come back and pay for everything. After making sure the man would be okay, the Samaritan went away. Now, Jesus asked the teacher of the law, which of these three men was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by robbers? The teacher thought for a moment. He looked at Jesus and said, "The one who showed mercy was a neighbor to the man who needed help." Jesus smiled and said, "You're absolutely right. Go and do the same." After Jesus told this story, the teacher of the law understood that being a neighbor to someone doesn't just mean someone who shares your background or beliefs. It means anyone who needs help. And Jesus wants us to show kindness to everyone, not just people we know or those who are like us. Now, let me ask you this question. Have you ever been a good neighbor to someone? Maybe you helped a stranger or lent a hand to someone in need. Being a good neighbor isn't just about mowing your lawn or fixing your house. It's about being kind to everyone, no matter if they're different from you. It's about showing love to those around you. And sometimes being a good neighbor means going out of your way to help someone. It might not be easy, but Jesus wants us to be like the Samaritan. So let's think about this. What does it mean to be a good neighbor? To answer this question, we need to look at the story of the Good Samaritan and learn from it. First, being a good neighbor means showing love and kindness. The Samaritan didn't hate the injured man even though he was different from him. Instead, he felt bad for him and wanted to help. In the same way, we should treat everyone with love, not just our friends or family. We should be kind to everyone, even those who might seem scary or different. Jesus taught us to love our neighbors as ourselves. That means we should wish for others what we want for ourselves. Like when we're sick or feel bad, we want someone to come and help us. Similarly, our neighbors and everyone else do too. Second, being a good neighbor means helping those in need. The Samaritan didn't ignore the injured man or pretend he wasn't there. He stopped to help and took care of him. Helping others is important. If we see someone struggling or in danger, we shouldn't just walk past them. We should stop and lend a hand. Just like the Samaritan, we should be ready to help those in need, no matter who they are. Third, being a good neighbor means putting aside our differences. The Samaritan didn't think about how different he was from the injured man. He didn't care that the man might not like him or believe in the same things. Instead, he focused on helping him. In the same way, we should put aside our differences and focus on helping others. Sometimes people can be mean or say bad things about others because they're different. But we should remember that everyone needs help sometimes, and we should be there for them. Finally, being a good neighbor means being compassionate. The Samaritan felt deep sorrow for the injured man. He understood how bad the man felt and wanted to help ease his pain. Being compassionate means understanding and sharing in the feelings of others. It means being there for someone who's sad, scared, or in pain. Jesus taught us to love others the way he loved us, and he showed us great compassion during his life on earth. We should try to be like him and show compassion to our neighbors. Being a good neighbor is important. It means being kind, helpful, not judging others, and showing compassion. We should remember that everyone needs kindness and help sometimes, and we should be there for them. Let's look at how we can be better neighbors in our daily lives. First, we can start by being kind to our neighbors and everyone around us. We should greet them with a smile and offer to help if they need it. Simple acts of kindness can make a big difference in someone's day. Second, we can help our neighbors by lending a hand when they need it. We could help by babysitting, running errands, or offering a listening ear. Being there for our neighbors shows that we care and strengthens our bonds with them. Next, we can be good neighbors by respecting their differences. We should embrace the diversity in our communities and celebrate the unique qualities of our neighbors. Instead of judging them, we should try to understand their perspectives and experiences. Finally, we can be compassionate neighbors by showing empathy and understanding. We should be there for our neighbors during difficult times and offer support and comfort when they are struggling. Being compassionate means being kind and helpful, especially when it matters the most. Being a good neighbor isn't just about following rules or avoiding trouble. It's about showing love and kindness to those around us. We can be good neighbors by being friendly, helpful, respectful, and compassionate. When we treat our neighbors this way, we create a better community for everyone. We should remember that being a good neighbor means helping everyone in need, not just people who are like us. We can be good neighbors by showing love, kindness, being helpful, respecting others, and being compassionate. Let's try to be better neighbors by practicing these things in our daily lives. We can start by treating our neighbors and everyone around us with kindness and respect. We can help our neighbors and be compassionate towards them. When we do these things, we can make our neighborhood a better place for everyone. I hope you enjoyed the story of the Good Samaritan and learned something valuable. Remember, we should be kind and helpful to everyone. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Once upon a time in the land of Israel, there was a teacher named Jesus who had many followers called disciples. They loved listening to him teach about God because he made things easy to understand and his teachings brought people joy. One bright morning, Jesus told his disciples, Let's take a boat across the Sea of Galilee. We'll go to the other side and I'll heal many people over there." So they got into a small boat and sailed away. There were only a few boats on the lake because it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining brightly and the waves were calm and sparkling like tiny mirrors. While they were sailing, Jesus and his disciples enjoyed the peaceful surroundings. They watched the gentle breeze ruffling the surface of the water and the colorful sails of the other boats dotting the horizon. Jesus taught his disciples about trusting God and having faith. He told them stories about people who had put their trust in God and experienced amazing things. He explained that faith is like a seed that grows into a strong tree, providing shade and comfort to those who believe in God. As they continued their journey, Jesus and his disciples talked about how important it is to have faith in God, even when things are scary or uncertain. Jesus explained that faith is like a light that shines in the darkness, guiding people through difficult times. He told them that whenever they face challenges or feel afraid, they should remember to trust in God and call out to him for help. As the morning wore on, the disciples started to get a little nervous because the sky began to look dark and cloudy. They could feel that something wasn't quite right and a big storm might be coming. However, Jesus remained calm and peaceful. He looked at the sky and the water, and he kept teaching his disciples about faith and trusting God. He told them that even when the weather seemed gloomy and stormy, they should remember that God was with them and would protect them. Suddenly, dark clouds rolled in quickly, covering the bright blue sky like a heavy blanket. Strong winds began to blow, making the waves on the sea grow bigger and crash against each other. The waves crashed against the little boat, rocking it dangerously from side to side. The disciples were scared because the storm was getting fiercer and fiercer. They could feel the boat getting wet as the waves splashed over the top, and they started to worry that it might sink. Despite the raging storm outside, Jesus was still calm and peaceful. He was sitting at the back of the boat on a small cushion, quietly sleeping with his head resting on a pillow. The disciples watched him in amazement, wondering how he could be so calm when they were all so scared. They couldn't understand why he wasn't worried about the danger they were in. As the storm grew stronger, the disciples started to panic. The little boat was being tossed around by the waves like a toy in a bathtub. They shouted and yelled, trying to make themselves heard over the sound of the wind and the waves. They cried out to Jesus, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Their words were filled with fear and desperation as they realized that the situation was becoming more and more dangerous. When Jesus heard his disciples crying out to him in fear, he slowly opened his eyes and woke up from his sleep. He calmly stood up from his seat and looked at the disciples with a gentle expression. "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" he asked them softly. His voice was calm and reassuring, like a lighthouse guiding ships in a stormy sea. The disciples looked at Jesus in surprise. They couldn't believe that he wasn't scared like they were. They had been together through many storms before, and they knew how dangerous this one was. "We are scared because we are in a big boat with a lot of water coming in," one of the disciples replied. "We're scared we're going to die." Jesus looked at the disciples and saw how scared and hopeless they had become. With love and compassion in his heart, he raised his hand and spoke softly but firmly, "Peace, be still." His words echoed across the stormy sea. As soon as Jesus spoke, The wind stopped blowing. The waves that were crashing and roaring suddenly became calm, and the sea became as smooth as glass. The clouds in the sky that had been dark and gloomy cleared away, revealing the bright blue sky and the shining sun. The disciples were amazed and filled with awe at what they had just witnessed. They couldn't believe that Jesus had calmed the storm with just his words. They had never seen anything like it before. The disciples looked at Jesus with a mix of amazement and gratitude. They couldn't understand how he had such power over nature. They had seen him perform miracles before, but this one was the most amazing of all. "Who are you? You are truly the Son of God," they exclaimed in unison. Jesus smiled at his disciples and said, "I am Jesus, the one you have been waiting for. I have the power to calm the storms in your life because I have the power over all of creation. But why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" He asked them gently. "We are sorry, teacher. We didn't mean to doubt you. We are scared and sometimes we forget that you're with us," the disciples replied, ashamed of their lack of faith. Jesus looked at his disciples with love and forgiveness in his heart. He knew that they had good intentions, but sometimes their fear and doubt got the better of them. "It's all right. I know you are trying your best. Just remember that I am always with you, even when you're afraid. Call out to me and I will help you," he said softly. As the sun began to set, Jesus and his disciples returned to shore. People gathered around them, eager to hear about their miraculous journey across the sea. When Jesus shared the story of the storm and how he had calmed it with just his words, the crowd was filled with wonder and awe. They praised Jesus for his power and his love for his disciples. From that day forward, the disciples never forgot the lesson they had learned during the storm. They knew that no matter how dark or scary things might seem, Jesus was with them and he had the power to calm the storms in their lives. They also realized that their faith needed to be strong and unwavering, just like Jesus. As the years passed, the disciples continued to spread the message of Jesus throughout the land of Israel. They told stories of his miracles, including the time when he calmed the storm, to inspire others to put their trust in him. The people who listened to their stories were amazed and inspired by the power and love of Jesus. And so the story of Jesus calming the storm became one of the most well-known miracles he performed during his lifetime. It was a reminder for everyone who heard it that no matter how rough the seas of life might be, Jesus had the power to bring peace and calm. The moral of the story is to trust Jesus even when things are scary or uncertain. Just like the disciples in the boat, we sometimes get scared and start to panic when we face difficult situations. But Jesus wants us to remember that he is always with us and has the power to help us through any challenge. All we need to do is have faith in him and call out to him for help. Jesus loves us very much and wants us to know that he will never leave us or forsake us. So whenever we feel afraid or helpless, we can turn to him and find comfort and strength. This is the incredible story of Jesus calming the storm. But this time, we are going to see the storm from the perspective of one of Jesus' disciples. Let's get started. The day before the miracle, Jesus had just finished feeding 5,000 hungry people with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. It was a great miracle, he said to the people after everyone had eaten and left. "But go away," Jesus told his disciples. "Get into the boat and cross over to the other side of the lake." So they did. But Jesus went up into a mountain to pray all by himself. The disciples were rowing along nicely, but soon the sky began to look darker and darker. The wind picked up, and before long, heavy rain poured down from the sky. And that's when the disciples realized, oh, Jesus isn't coming with us. Not long after that, the sky grew really dark, and suddenly huge waves began to slam against their boat. Waves as tall as mountains almost caused the boat to flip over. "We're gonna die," cried John, one of Jesus' disciples. Jesus, however, was still on the mountain. He was praying quietly and calmly, not letting any of the storm's angry feelings affect him. And though he was very far away, Jesus could see everything that was happening. He saw how hard the disciples were rowing, but he also saw the fear deep inside their hearts. Jesus knew exactly what they needed. In the middle of the night, right in the middle of the storm, Jesus stopped praying. He stood up and started to walk. Step by step, Jesus walked toward his disciples. He made his way across the wild waters, moving calmly and steadily. Meanwhile, the disciples were terrified. The wind was roaring and the waves were crashing. "We are doomed," cried James, another one of Jesus' disciples. Just then, they saw a strange sight. Someone was walking toward them on the top of the waves. Who could that be? They wondered. The person was getting closer and closer, and soon they could hear him calling out, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." The disciples couldn't believe what they were hearing. "Is it a ghost?" someone asked. Jesus answered, "No, it's me. Don't be afraid." Then they recognized his voice. "It's Jesus," they cried. Suddenly, Peter, who was sitting in the bottom of the boat, called out to Jesus, "If it really is you, tell me to come to you on the water." Jesus replied, "Come." So Peter did something amazing. He stepped out of the boat and began to walk on the water and make his way toward Jesus. At first, Peter walked very well. His eyes were focused on Jesus. His feet were steady on the water. But soon the wind and the waves began to make him dizzy. Peter looked away from Jesus and immediately he started to sink. "Oh, no!" he cried. "Lord, save me!" That's when Jesus reached out his hand and grabbed Peter's. "You have little faith," Jesus said gently to him. "Why did you doubt?" Then Jesus and Peter climbed into the boat together. And the moment Jesus entered the boat, the storm stopped. The sea became perfectly calm. The other disciples fell to their knees in awe. "Truly, you are the Son of God," they said to Jesus. So let's think about what we learned from this story. Number 1. Jesus wants us to trust him, especially when we're afraid. In this story, Jesus told his disciples to get into the boat and cross the sea while he stayed behind to pray. This shows us that we can trust Jesus to take care of us, even when we're alone or facing challenges. Sometimes God may want us to do something that seems scary or difficult, but we can remember that he will always be with us and help us through tough times. For example, maybe you have to give a presentation at school, and you're really nervous because you're afraid that you will forget what to say. But you can remember that Jesus wants you to trust him. Just like he helped his disciples in the storm, he will also help you. Before the presentation, you can pray to Jesus, asking him to help you stay calm and remember what you need to say. Just like the disciples in the boat, you might feel scared and uncertain at first, but Jesus will be there to support you every step of the way. And once you finish your presentation, you can thank Jesus for helping you through it. Number 2. Our faith can help us do amazing things. When Jesus calmed the storm, he gave his disciples the strength to face the challenge of rowing across the lake. Similarly, when we have faith in Jesus, it gives us the strength to overcome obstacles and challenges in our lives. With his help, we can do amazing things we never thought possible. For example, maybe you want to make new friends at school, but you're shy and don't know where to start. You can remember that Jesus wants you to trust him and that your faith can help you do amazing things. You can start by being kind and friendly to the people around you. With Jesus' help, you can overcome your shyness and build meaningful friendships. And number 3, when we lose faith, we start to sink. In the story, Peter started to sink when he lost focus on Jesus. But when Jesus grabbed his hand, he was saved. This reminds us that when we lose faith in Jesus, we can face challenges and struggles, but as long as we hold on to Jesus, he will help us. For example, maybe you're feeling sad or lonely. You can remember that Jesus wants you to trust him and hold on to his hand. Talk to him about your feelings and ask for his help. Jesus will always be there to listen and support you. Now let's think about the whole story. Jesus was on the mountain praying, but he didn't stay there. He got up and started to walk toward his disciples. Why do you think Jesus did that? Do you think he wanted to show off how powerful he was? No, I believe Jesus walked on the water to show his disciples that he cared about them. He knew they were scared and struggling, so he went to help them. Just like Jesus came to help the disciples in the storm, he also wants to help us when we're facing difficulties. We just need to call out to him and trust that he will come to our rescue. Let's go back to the story one more time. The disciples were rowing across the lake, but they couldn't reach the other side because of the storm. The storm represented the many problems and challenges they faced. But when Jesus calmed the storm, it symbolized how Jesus helps us overcome our problems. When we put our trust in Jesus, he can bring peace and calmness to our lives, even when we're going through tough times. Lastly, let's think about the importance of the story. This story teaches us that no matter how dark and scary things may seem, Jesus is always with us. He cares about us and wants to help us. All we have to do is call out to him and believe that he will answer our prayers. This story reminds us to never lose hope, no matter how difficult the situation may be. Well, friends, that brings us to the end of today's story. Remember the important lesson we learned today. No matter how scary things may seem, Jesus is always with us. He wants us to trust him, especially when we're afraid. With Jesus by our side, we can do amazing things, and as long as we hold on to him, he will never let us sink. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on any of our wonderful stories. Thank you for joining us today. We invite you to watch again and remember that Jesus loves you. Have a wonderful day. Bye. Once upon a time in a land filled with sunshine and laughter, there lived a young boy named Leo. Leo was known throughout the village for his big heart, infectious giggle, and an insatiable curiosity that always led him into all kinds of funny situations. One day, Leo's mom told him, "Go to the market and buy some carrots for dinner." But as soon as he reached the market, his eyes popped wide. There, right in front of him, was a patch of sunflowers taller than him. Curiosity got the best of him, and instead of buying carrots, Leo ran off to explore the sunflower patch. As the sun began its journey towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Leo was nowhere to be seen. Worried, his mother went out searching for him. She called out his name, her voice trembling with worry, but only the wind answered her. Hours passed, turning into a night filled with anxious moments and silent tears. Just when hope began to dwindle, a familiar voice echoed in the darkness. "Leo! Leo! Where are you?" It was his dad. Relief washed over her as she saw them walking hand in hand, his face etched with worry and his eyes filled with relief. "Oh, Leo, where were you? We were so worried," she said, pulling him into a tight hug. Later that night, tucked safely in bed, Leo snuggled closer to his mom, the memory of his father's frantic call still ringing in his ears. In a small voice, he apologized for causing them so much worry. His father and mother looked at each other, their faces softening with understanding. They knew that scolding wouldn't help. Instead, his mother said, "You know, sometimes when we lose our way, we need someone to guide us back." As the days passed, Leo couldn't shake off the feeling of guilt. He missed the loving smile in his mother's eyes and the comforting tone of his father's voice. Most of all, he missed the warm embrace that made him feel safe. One day, he decided to talk to his dad about it. His father listened patiently, his gaze unwavering. "Do you think God was angry with you?" he asked gently. Leo nodded, his lower lip trembling. "Well," his father said, placing a hand on his shoulder, "I want you to remember this. God's love for you is like a rope that never breaks. No matter how far you stray or what mistakes you make, He's always there waiting to pull you back home." These words became a guiding light for Leo, reminding him that no matter how lost he felt, he was never beyond God's reach. With renewed determination, he started making changes. He began helping his mom in the garden, mending fences with his dad, and spending more time with his friends. Slowly but surely, he rebuilt the trust and strengthened his bond with his family and God. Meanwhile, deep in the lush green forest, nestled among the tall trees and sparkling streams, lived a wise old owl named Athena. Athena wasn't just any owl. She had a magical gift. Every time someone did something kind or helpful, she would sprinkle them with stardust. And when enough stardust gathered in their hearts, their hidden potential would bloom. One day, Athena perched on a branch outside Leo's window. She had been watching him. Impressed by his transformation, she swooped down and perched on his windowsill. Startled but unafraid, Leo opened the window and Athena flew in. "You have shown kindness, compassion, and courage," she hooted softly. "And for that, I sprinkle you with stardust." As the stardust touched Leo, it sparked with golden light, filling him with warmth and a sense of wonder. Then Athena disappeared, leaving Leo puzzled but hopeful. Days turned into weeks, and Leo continued to do good deeds, not because he wanted stardust, but because it made him feel good. One day, Athena returned. "You have earned your reward," she said, presenting a golden acorn. "This isn't just any acorn," she explained. "Plant it, and when it grows, it will grant you the strength of an oak tree." Leo beamed, thanked Athena, and rushed to plant the acorn. Days turned into months, and Leo cared for the sapling. He watered it during dry spells and shielded it from harsh winds. One day, as Leo rested under the shade of the growing tree, he noticed a group of kids being bullied by an older boy. Without hesitation, he stood up to the bully, surprising everyone. The sight of Leo, standing tall and strong, seemed to startle the bully, causing him to rethink his actions. The other kids cheered for Leo, and for the first time, he realized that the stardust had brought out his inner strengths. News of Leo's bravery spread, and soon he was known not just for his kindness, but also for his courage. He helped others without expecting anything in return. Years went by, and Leo grew into a strong, compassionate young man, always ready to lend a helping hand. The golden oak tree became a symbol of hope and strength in the village, and Athena, the wise old owl, watched him proudly, knowing that she had played a part in helping Leo discover his true potential. The villagers loved gathering under the tree, sharing stories and laughter. It became a place of unity and joy, and when they looked up at its sturdy branches reaching towards the sky, they remembered Leo's journey from a curious boy to a courageous young man. Meanwhile, deep within the tranquil waters of a sacred lake lived a wise old turtle named Chili. Chili wasn't just any turtle. She possessed a mystical ability. Whenever someone performed an act of bravery, she sprinkled them with shimmering lake water. This water held a special power. It could enhance the qualities that made them heroes. One day, Chili surfaced near Leo as he was watering his oak tree. She had been watching him, not just as a curious turtle, but as a guardian of courage. When she saw the compassion and bravery in his eyes, she knew it was time for her to act. "Young Leo," she said in a voice as ancient and deep as the lake itself, "you have shown great bravery today. For that, I sprinkle you with water from the lake of courage." As the water touched Leo, it sparkled with emerald light, making him feel invigorated and empowered. Chili then disappeared back into the water, leaving Leo confused but intrigued. Days turned into weeks, and Leo continued to perform acts of kindness and bravery, not because he sought recognition, but because it was who he wanted to be. Then one day, Athena, the wise old owl, returned. "You have earned your reward," she said, presenting a silver feather that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. "This is no ordinary feather," Athena explained. "It's a feather of wisdom from the great oak tree in the sky. It will grant you clarity of thought and understanding." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Leo thanked Athena and carefully tucked the feather away. As the years passed, Leo found himself using the feather often. It helped him solve problems, understand others better, and make wise decisions. The townspeople often came to him for advice, and he always gave it honestly and fairly. One evening, as Leo sat under his beloved oak tree, he noticed a group of villagers arguing. They couldn't seem to solve their differences, and their anger was palpable. Seeing their distress, Leo stepped in. Using the wisdom granted by the great oak tree, he helped them see each other's perspectives and find common ground. Eventually, their anger subsided, replaced by understanding and compromise. From that day on, Leo became known as a mediator, helping others resolve their conflicts peacefully. The villagers respected him, not just for his bravery and kindness, but also for his wisdom. They often gathered under the oak tree, seeking his guidance and support. And as Leo looked out at the faces of the villagers, he realized that the greatest reward wasn't the water or the feather, but the trust and respect he had earned. The journey of Leo, the curious boy who became the hero of the village, reminds us that every small step of kindness, bravery, and wisdom can lead to extraordinary transformations. Just as Leo discovered his true potential with the help of Athena and Chile, we too have the power to make a difference in the world. All it takes is a willingness to help, a sprinkle of magic, and the courage to follow our hearts. Once upon a time in a land far, far away, people followed a teacher named Jesus. And one day they went to a beautiful lake for a relaxing boat ride. Let's go back in time and see what happened next. It was a sunny morning. The sky was clear blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds. Birds sang happily in the trees and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Jesus and his disciples decided to take a break and enjoy the beautiful day by the lake. Let's cross to the other side, suggested Jesus. It'll be a nice change of scenery. The disciples, Peter, James, John, and Andrew, along with 2 other followers, didn't need any convincing. They left the crowd behind and hurried towards a wooden sailboat that was waiting for them by the shore. The disciples couldn't wait to spend some quality time with Jesus on the lake. Peter, who was usually full of energy, took charge of adjusting the sail. John, known for his adventurous spirit, pulled the rope to help steer the boat. Meanwhile, Jesus quietly made his way to the back of the boat and lay down, a serene smile gracing his lips. The others followed suit, finding comfortable positions in the cozy boat. As they set off into the vast expanse of the lake, the water beneath them sparkled like 1,000 diamonds in the sunlight. The gentle rocking of the boat created a soothing rhythm, and the disciples couldn't help but feel a sense of tranquility wash over them. The children on the shore waved goodbye as the boat glided further into the shimmering waters. "What a perfect moment!" Andrew exclaimed, his eyes twinkling with joy. The disciples felt a profound sense of gratitude for Jesus, who had made it possible for them to escape the noise and chaos of everyday life and find solace in the tranquil beauty of the lake. As the boat sailed smoothly through the crystal clear water, the disciples couldn't help but engage in lively chatter, their voices echoing the joy in their hearts. They talked about their experiences, shared stories, and laughed, their contagious happiness filling the boat. The gentle breeze tousled their hair and played with their robes, making it feel like a carefree moment stolen from the demands of their daily lives. But as the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, a strange shift occurred. A heavy silence fell over the group and their laughter subsided. The weight of their responsibilities as Jesus' disciples settled upon them once again. The joy of the moment faded, replaced by the daunting tasks and challenges that lay ahead. The disciples knew that their peaceful retreat could not last forever. The time would come when they would have to face the world's rejection and persecution once again. The thought of the hardships that awaited them cast a shadow over their hearts, dampening the carefree spirits that had filled the boat just moments before. As if sensing their inner turmoil, Jesus stirred from his slumber. Opening his eyes slowly, he turned to his disciples, a knowing smile gracing his lips. "Are you troubled?" he asked gently, his voice echoing concern. The disciples hesitated, unsure how to express the conflicting emotions that swirled within them. On one hand, they reveled in the serenity of the moment, cherishing the precious time spent with Jesus. Yet the looming shadow of their future struggles weighed heavily on their minds. Before the disciples could respond, a sudden gust of wind swept across the lake, ruffling the water and sending ripples across its surface. The sky, which had been clear moments before, now bore the first ominous signs of an approaching storm. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the placid waters. The wind picked up, creating small waves that bobbed up and down, whispering tales of the tempest to come. Unfazed by the changing weather, Jesus rose to his feet, his movements as graceful and calm as ever. With a reassuring smile, he turned to his disciples, his eyes sparkling with wisdom. "Look," he said softly, gesturing towards the darkening sky. "The boat is about to encounter a storm, but you shouldn't worry because I am here." As if summoned by his words, the wind suddenly intensified, whipping across the lake with newfound force. The sky roared with thunder, and the disciples huddled closer together, their faces etched with worry. The waves grew larger, crashing against the boat and threatening to engulf it. The storm had arrived, and its fury showed no signs of relenting. In the midst of the chaos, Jesus remained an island of serenity. Standing tall and unwavering, he faced the storm head-on, his presence a beacon of strength and resilience in the face of adversity. The disciples looked to him, their eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. They knew that Jesus was their only hope, and their faith in him was their anchor in the raging sea of their emotions. With the storm intensifying around them, the disciples turned to Jesus, their gazes pleading for guidance and comfort. They had witnessed his miracles, heard his teachings, and trusted in his power. Now, as the boat threatened to capsize under the relentless assault of the waves, they clung to their faith, hoping that Jesus would protect them from the wrath of the storm. And as the storm reached its crescendo, the disciples felt fear gripping their hearts. Waves crashed over the boat, spraying icy water into the air and drenching them in its cold embrace. The wind screamed, testing their resolve. At that moment, they were at the mercy of the elements, and their safety seemed like a distant hope. But through it all, Jesus stood firm, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his hands outstretched as if reaching for something beyond the raging storm. The disciples watched him, mesmerized by his unwavering calm in the face of the tempest. His composure radiated an inexplicable sense of peace that seemed to penetrate the chaos around them. As the storm raged on, the disciples felt a mixture of awe and desperation. They saw in Jesus an embodiment of strength and resilience, a beacon of hope in the darkness. Yet they also feared that he might be at risk, exposed to the full force of the raging waves and biting winds. The conflict between their admiration for his courage and their concern for his well-being tore at their hearts, making it a tormenting experience. But then something remarkable happened. As the storm reached its peak, Jesus raised his hand slowly, his eyes blazing with an otherworldly light. In that moment, the wind seemed to listen. The waves obeyed. The very essence of the storm responded to his command. And as he spoke, his voice echoed with authority, cutting through the roar of the wind. "Peace, be still!" As his words left his lips, the storm began to subside. The wind, which had been howling just moments before, gradually lost its ferocity. The waves, which had been crashing violently, calmed into gentle swells. The rain, which had been pouring relentlessly, softened into a gentle drizzle. It was as if nature itself bowed to his command, recognizing the power that resided within him. The disciples watched in amazement as the transformation occurred before their very eyes. The storm that had threatened to consume them suddenly retreated, leaving behind a sense of wonder and disbelief. The sudden calm that descended after the storm was almost deafening. The disciples, still trembling from the ordeal, looked at each other in disbelief. Their eyes, wide with astonishment, struggled to comprehend what they had just experienced. The transition from the height of the storm to this eerie quiet was so abrupt that it left them speechless. In that moment, the reality of Jesus' power and divinity crashed over them, renewing their faith and deepening their understanding of who he truly was. The gentle lapping of the waves against the boat was the only sound that broke the stunned silence. The disciples, still shaken by the recent turmoil, found solace in the calming presence of the lake. The once angry waters now mirrored the serene sky, reflecting the peace that had returned. The wind, which had been their tormentor moments before, had become a lullaby, rustling the leaves of the trees surrounding the lake. The birds, as if oblivious to the drama that had unfolded, returned to their cheerful songs, filling the air with melodies of joy. The sun, which had been hidden behind the storm clouds, peeked through the clear sky, casting its warm rays upon the lake. The golden sunlight danced on the water, creating a spectacle of sparkling diamonds. It was as if nature itself was rejoicing in the return of calm. The disciples, still processing the miracle they had just witnessed, felt a renewed sense of gratitude and awe. The peaceful surroundings served as a stark reminder of the tumultuous journey they had just endured. The tranquil beauty of the lake after the storm became a testament to Jesus' power, reminding them that he was their protector and guide through the storms of life. And as the boat approached the shore, the disciples couldn't help but exchange amazed glances. The events of the past few hours had been seared into their memories and would forever be a part of their shared journey with Jesus. They had faced the wrath of the storm and emerged not only unscathed, but with a deeper understanding of the extraordinary being they followed. The calmness that enveloped them as they stepped onto the shore was more than just a respite from the storm. It was a profound sense of renewal, a moment of reflection, and a quiet celebration of the triumph of faith over fear. As the disciples recounted the events of the day around a campfire that night, their voices were filled with wonder and reverence. The memory of the storm and Jesus' miraculous intervention served as a constant reminder of the challenges they would face and the strengths they would need to overcome them. Through their shared experience, their bond with each other and with Jesus grew stronger. They realized that they were not merely fishermen or ordinary people. They were chosen vessels through whom the divine was unfolding its plan. And as Thomas spoke, his words echoed the sentiments of his fellow disciples. "We will never forget this day," he said, his voice filled with awe. "We have seen and experienced such power and grace in our midst. Truly, Jesus is the Son of God." And so, with hearts full of gratitude and faith, the disciples continued their journey, carrying with them the lessons learned from the storm and the unwavering belief in the miracle-working power of Jesus Christ. Dear children, don't be afraid. Even when life feels stormy, Jesus is always with you. He can calm your storm too. And as the cartoon ended, a gentle melody filled the air, carrying with it the essence of peace and reassurance. Jesus walked along the shore, his figure bathed in the soft evening light, with children trailing behind him, their faces upturned in innocence and wonder. The scene was one of serenity, a visual reminder of the message that resonated throughout the story. Superimposed over the image were the words, "With Jesus, you are never alone," each letter seeming to glow with a soft inner light. These words were not just a part of the cartoon. They were a promise, a truth that transcended the animated world and touched the hearts of the viewers. As the final notes of the music swelled and faded, the screen went dark, leaving the audience in a contemplative silence. It was a silence that had space for reflection, for the message to settle in and for the assurance to resonate deep within. The cartoon had woven its magic, combining a compelling story with timeless words to create a lasting impression. And now, as the credits rolled, it left its audience with a sense of calm and connection. Today's big story from the Bible comes from Mark chapter 6, verses 30 to 44. It is a story of when Jesus fed 5,000 men with only 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. But we call it the story of the miracle of the loaves and fishes. So let's begin with our characters. Let's start with Jesus. That's right, our Lord and Savior, the Son of God. And the setting is this. So Jesus had been busy teaching people. In fact, crowds followed him everywhere. Then his disciples came and wanted him to go someplace else because there were lots of people who needed his help. But Jesus said, "Let's just stay here. You give the people something to eat." They looked at each other and thought, how could we do that? How could we make sure everyone got food? Because there was about 5,000 men there, not counting women and children. But before they could figure out a way to solve this problem, Jesus already had a plan. Look at verse 37. Jesus said to his disciples, "Have the people sit down in groups of about 50 each." So the disciples did this. And when it was evening, they reported to him, "We have here 5 loaves and 2 fish." Then he said, "Bring them here to me." So they brought the food to Jesus. It was probably just a boy who had packed this lunch, just like you pack your lunch for school. So Jesus looked up to heaven and said a prayer of thanks. He then took the loaves, gave thanks again for the food, and distributed it to those who were sitting there. 2 fish were divided among the whole crowd. Everyone ate until they were full. Not a morsel was wasted. Then the cartoon shifts to show us the reaction after the miracle. Verse 43 says, "And they all ate and were satisfied." And those who had eaten miraculous fish were 5,000 men, besides women and children. And those 12 baskets of leftover food were picked up by the disciples. There were 12 baskets, one for each of the 12 disciples. And then verse 44 says, "And he said to them, 'Take note of the fig tree. No longer eat anything until the fig blossoms appear on it. For as figs cannot be sweet and good unless ripened by the sun, neither can these be sweet and good unless ripened in his teaching." Here's a big idea for kids. This miracle teaches us that if we share what we have, even if it seems small, God can do amazing things with it. Here's a big idea for grown-ups. This passage shows us that when we share our resources, time, talents, or love, God can do amazing things through us. Okay, let's break down why this story matters. Point number 1. When you think you don't have enough, you might have more than you realize. Remember the boy with his 5 loaves and 2 fish? Maybe that boy thought his lunch wasn't much, but it turned into enough food for everyone. Sometimes when we want to help someone, we might think we don't have enough to give, but if we have a little bit, that's a start. Think about the first time you ever volunteered somewhere or gave some money to charity. You might have thought you weren't giving much, but any amount is a great start to helping others. It's kind of like putting quarters in a parking meter. If you put 1 quarter in, that doesn't start the meter. You have to put 2. But once you do, the meter runs for a long time. Point number 2. When you give to others, you are blessed. The disciples might have been a little overwhelmed at having to feed all those people. But when they shared the little bit that they did have, everyone was able to eat, and they even had food left over. This is called being blessed. When you give to others, you're often blessed in return. Maybe not always with more money or food, but in ways that matter most. Like when you feel good about helping others. When you do something kind for someone else, you get to experience the feeling of generosity and kindness. It feels really nice, doesn't it? Point number 3. Don't worry if you don't have all the answers. The disciples didn't know how they were going to feed everyone. And they didn't have all the answers, but they did know that there was food and they shared it. Sometimes when we want to help, we might wonder if we have all the skills we need. It's okay if you don't. You don't have to have all the answers. Just do what you can and God will do the rest. Maybe you don't have any money to give, but you do have a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on for a friend. Or maybe you're great at math and can help a classmate struggling in your class. What are you good at? What can you do to help others? Share your gifts with the world and you'll find that you are blessed when you do. In the end, Jesus took the small amount of food that was given to him and multiplied it so everyone could have enough. Jesus cares about us and wants to take care of us. He fed the 5,000 so no one would go hungry. He wants to feed you and me too. But sometimes he feeds us in different ways. Sometimes he feeds our bodies and sometimes he feeds our souls. Now let's finish up with a couple of questions for you to think about. First question. What small thing can you share with someone else today? And the second question. How can you be a blessing to someone else? Take a moment and write your answer to one or both of these questions in the comment section below. It's a great way to remember what we've learned today. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this animated Bible story. We've got lots more where that came from. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you never miss an upload. And don't forget to like, share and comment. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. A sunny day begins. It was a beautiful day. The sun shone brightly in the clear blue sky. Jesus and his 12 disciples got into a small wooden boat by the Sea of Galilee. The waves were sparkling and the gentle breeze made the white sails of nearby ships dance on the water. It was perfect weather for sailing. Peter, James and John used their strong arms to row the boat. As they moved through the water, the disciples laughed and talked about the amazing miracles Jesus had done that day. People had come from all over to see him. He had healed a man who couldn't speak and another man who had been blind since birth. He had even raised a young girl from the dead. Jesus, who was sitting in the front of the boat, felt very tired after a long day of teaching and healing people. So he found a soft cushion in the back of the boat and closed his eyes to take a nap. The other disciples kept rowing and the boat went farther and farther out onto the lake. But as the afternoon wore on, big dark clouds rolled across the sky. Soon the wind began to pick up. The waves grew bigger and bigger and the sky crackled with lightning. Before the disciples knew what was happening, a terrible storm had broken out. Waves crashed over the boat. Rain poured down in buckets and the wind howled like a hungry wolf. The once gentle rocking of the boat became a dangerous swaying as the waves tossed them about. The disciples struggled to keep rowing, but the storm was too strong. They could feel the boat begin to fill with water. "We are going to sink," cried Andrew, one of the disciples. "Look at that wave coming toward us. It will swallow us whole," shouted Peter. But Jesus didn't stir in his sleep. They looked for Jesus. The disciples began to panic. They desperately searched for Jesus, but they couldn't find him in the chaos of the storm. So they rushed to the back of the boat where Jesus was sleeping. "Jesus, wake up!" they shouted over the sound of the wind and the waves. "Don't you care if we drown?" Jesus slowly opened his eyes. At first, he looked sleepy and confused. Then he saw the worried faces of his disciples and the raging storm all around them. But even though the storm was at its worst, Jesus looked calm. He stood up in the boat, and water immediately soaked his robe. But he did not seem to notice the cold water. Instead, he turned to the disciples and said in a clear, strong voice, "Peace, be still," and raised his hand as if he was calming a wild animal. Then something amazing happened. The wind stopped. The waves suddenly became still and the rain disappeared. The clouds parted and the sun shone through, making a beautiful rainbow. The disciples stared in amazement at the now calm sea. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. "Even the wind and the waves obey him," they whispered to each other in awe. One by one, they took a deep breath and relaxed, realizing they were safe. Jesus asks a question. After the storm had completely passed, Jesus looked at his disciples with kindness in his eyes. "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" he asked them gently. The disciples were ashamed of themselves. They hadn't believed in Jesus' power over the storm, and they hadn't trusted that he would protect them. But now they understood that he was not only a great teacher, but also the Son of God, full of power and love. They sat in silence. As the disciples sat quietly in the boat, they thought about everything that had happened that day. They remembered the sick people Jesus had healed, the dead girl he had brought back to life, and now the storm he had calmed. They realized that he had done all these things for them and for everyone else who needed help. With each passing moment, a new understanding grew in their hearts. They knew that Jesus wasn't just a teacher or a healer. He was more than they could have ever imagined. He had power over all of creation, even the weather. And most importantly, he cared for them and wanted to help them. The boat reaches shore. When Jesus and his disciples arrived at the shore, the disciples felt a sense of wonder and gratitude. As they stepped out of the boat onto the soft, sandy beach, their feet sank into the warm sand. They couldn't stop thinking about the great power they had witnessed in Jesus. Children ran to meet them. As the disciples walked along the beach, they saw a group of children playing in the shallow water. The children stopped their game and ran toward the disciples, their eyes shining with excitement. "Tell us a story," they said in unison, their voices ringing with youthful energy. Peter, who was always kind to children, knelt down on the sand and a smile spread across his face. "Well, Let me tell you about the time when Jesus calmed a storm that was almost as big as this entire beach, he said. And was that? He began to tell them an exciting tale of the day Jesus calmed the storm. He told them how the disciples were scared and how Jesus woke up and calmed the storm with just a word. The children listened intently, their eyes wide with wonder as Peter painted a vivid picture of the events that had unfolded on that stormy sea. The children gasped as he described the huge waves and the loud thunder, and they cheered when he told them how Jesus had saved the disciples from danger. As Peter finished his story, the children thanked him with a chorus of "You're welcome." Their laughter echoed across the beach. Jesus watched the scene with a gentle smile on his face. He was pleased that Peter had shared his story with the children and that they had listened so attentively. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He bent down and said to the children, "Even when life feels like a storm, I am with you." The children looked up at him with innocent curiosity. They didn't understand all of what he was saying, but they sensed his kindness and they felt safe in his presence. Jesus smiled again and ruffled the hair of a little boy who had been sitting close by. "Remember, even when you're afraid, trust that someone is there to help you," he said softly. The children nodded their heads, though some were still too young to fully grasp the meaning of his words. But as the years went by, those words would echo in their hearts and guide them through the challenges of life. Jesus bids the children goodbye. When it was time for Jesus and his disciples to say goodbye to the children, there were a few teary faces. The children had enjoyed listening to Peter's story and they liked asking Jesus questions. But Jesus knew it was time to move on. He had many more people to teach and heal, and the disciples had other places to visit. Before they left, Jesus knelt down in front of the children and looked them in the eye. "Always remember that I love you," he said, "and never be afraid to ask for help when you need it." The children repeated after him, "We will never forget that you love us, Jesus." They hugged him goodbye and waved until he and the disciples were out of sight. That day, everyone learned that when fear is great, Jesus is greater. And no matter what, he brings peace to every storm. The end.